the writings from Apollinaris really spoke to me. So I think that that's who I'm going to start with. Apollinaris wrote that it's not possible to take the body separately and call it a creature, since it is altogether inseparable from him whose body it is. So I thought about that for a little bit, and what I see is Apollinaris saying that the Son of God and God are conjoined into the unity of God, and then he proof texts his argument with a quote from John chapter 1, verse 14, saying that the Word then becomes flesh. Essentially, I believe that Apollinaris argues that Jesus is both coessential with God in spirit and coessential with humanity in flesh. Clearly taking what I think is the Orthodox position, because for him, Christ's nature is homoousios. And then Apollinaris puts his own spin, though, on Nicaea. And what he does is he embraces the fleshiness of Jesus as Jesus' humanity, while attributing Jesus' intellect with divinity. If I'm understanding this correctly, Apollinaris is saying that the Creator exists in Jesus' intellect, because Jesus' intellect is the source of his homoousios. We, as followers of Jesus, can only emulate Jesus because our intelligence is only homoousios, that ours, because we're ordinary humans, is like Jesus but different from Jesus. And then, like the Creator and the Son being homoousios, we are made of flesh and we are filled with soul. So I imagine that Apollinaris' theology became Western heresy, probably because it yields a slightly different soteriology than the Orthodox position. But the more I think about it, even though it might yield a different soteriology, it still has the ability to result in a very similar ecclesiology. And I think that that's something that's really important for us to consider, because even though the Council of Ephesus, in, I think, if I'm remembering right, in 381, even though the Council of Ephesus declared Apollinaris' position as not only not orthodox, but as a heresy, thinking through that slight difference and how he became declared a heretic, I think had more to do with ecclesiology than right belief. And don't get me wrong, you see, I think that the differences are important in historical theology because tracing changes in thinking among the patristics help us to realize how the discussions and conclusions that they made provide a rhetorical model that we can still use today. However, what I find really repugnant mostly is how the patristic theologies played out in church history and its place in social history. Frankly, though, I'm not certain I'm seeing this right. Apollinaris' ideas that the Son and the Father are one in mind could certainly have been argued in a way that could have made it the Orthodox position. And I admittedly say that I am being rather cynical when I say this, because I think Athanasius made theological decisions based on power and control rather than right belief. You see, Athanasius watched Roman forces losing battles, and he still had in his memory a time when Christianity wasn't part of the empire. No, he didn't live during that time, but it was certainly within the collective memory of the people in the culture. And what I think he needed was a way to fortify the power of the church, because if the Roman Empire fell, the church would still be needed by the people. Athanasius' insistence on a single way for all Christendom to believe was a way to create Roman Catholic Empire separate from whatever empire would replace the Roman Empire. It was about control, it was about power. By simply telling the masses that Christian belief denies logic, and that the right answer about what this belief is that it's simply a mystery, it allows the church, as the becoming empire, to subjugate its followers. It allows them to tax them, essentially establishing its own power by requiring the abdication of the regular person's mind. And frankly, I don't think that I'm being too far-fetched, given the fact that we know how brutal and how ruthless Athanasius was as a governing politician. And in his day, being that bishop, he was a governing politician, and there was no separation between the Roman Empire and the Church of the Empire. They were seen as one and the same. So I want to leave you with this thought. Apollinaris implies that it is in divine activity, and specifically in the activation of Christ as the agent of that activity, where God remains unaltered. And so I wonder, when we hear that, do you hear orthodoxy, or are you hearing heresy? Thanks for listening.